everybody, this is Marty from Dawgs blog with a noontime report of the morning session of the Frank Carson et al. Trial for December 7th, 2018. Court was scheduled to start at 9 o'clock. The judge got on the bench around 9:15. Actually didn't get on the bench. She took Peter Rodriguez and Marlissa Ferreras into chambers in regards to Walter Wells, who's in there for continue his dates, trying to figure out when this monstrosity of a trial is going to be over. They came out around 9:25. Walter Wells was continued until March 22nd, 2019 at 9 o'clock. Judge Niga also noted that there should be a trial date around the end of April. I doubt if this trial is going to be over by then. Back to the Frank Carson et al. Case. Marlissa Ferrer was turning over some more discovery of apparently some Praveen Singh federal papers that were overlooked earlier. It was just a few pages. I don't think the attorneys think it's really important stuff anyway. It just needs to be turned over. Marlissa Ferrer also noted that Jai Gohel had not picked up some of his discovery waiting at the DA's office and was hand-delivering it to him now. She just said the starting date was from the middle of November. There were several documents and recordings and some CHP info that was released in the pitches motion. Judge Uniga said she wanted to talk about the CHP policy and the relevance that Marlissa Ferrer was going into with some of that stuff with Eddie Quintanar. She said is to impeach Quintanar. The policy is that Q signed and was briefed on when he was signed in. There's the policies and stuff that he had signed when he was hired by the CHP. His behavior and conduct in this case is being deceitful, and his lack of being forthwith in this trial and with investigators. Quintanar had conversations with Daljeet Atwal, and he had not been with Atwal making comments in regards to the case, and for Quintanar not turning that information over. Atwal had called Quintanar on July 15, 2012, and also had a conversation July 12th of 2012. The average call, she says, she looked it up, was about 7 or 8 minutes. But on 7/15 of 2012, it was 13 minutes. It was more lengthy, as if that meeting meant something. She's trying to show his conduct during this time period, and Quintanar, what Quintanar said in those wiretaps goes to credibility. Marlissa Ferrer was trying to show that Quintanar was not making good choices and does not feel Quintanar was just listening to bad advice from reps and others at the CHP. Quintanar was told he did not have rights to certain situations by some CHP brass. Judge Iniga advised that she had already ruled on some of this stuff, and that was some of the objections of the defense, and she has read the CHP policies, which she did thoroughly during the pitches motion. She said Marlissa Ferrer has painted this with a broad brush, and it's not very specific about what she's trying to do. Marlissa Ferrer started talking about the role of law enforcement officers saving lives and property, and they're supposed to work against oppression and protect the rights of the public. Judge Iniga wanted to read a copy of that, what she was reading, and Marlissa Ferrer wanted to keep reading. Judge tells her again she wants to read a copy for herself. Marlissa Ferrer said he was disrespectful to officers, and Judge Iniga ruled that he had been disrespectful to officers, and Marlissa Ferrer wanted to keep arguing with the judge, even though the judge agreed with what she was saying. She said that Quintanar was trying to help the outlaws. The CHP policy was being read by Marlissa Ferreira to protect the public and the rights of all person. Says she wants to say more, but she does not want to give up her whole strategy in this questioning, which she's got to do anyway because she's got to ask the questions. So she doesn't want to tell the judge the question she wants to ask is what she's saying. Zuniga wants an offer of proof to determine the credibility, and she cannot do it because she cannot do something because some of these objections have been sustained. Marlissa Ferreira wants to go step by step through the policy and the core values of the CHP and how it relates to their friendships and being a CHP officer. She also noted that they're supposed to enforce the laws without favor or ill will. They're not supposed to favor friends or family or anything like that. And Quintanar also runs out the back door to avoid law enforcement officers at the CHP station in Modesto. As a CHP officer, he is sworn to obey these laws. Attorney Hans argued that Marlissa has convoluted everything in this offer of proof in these conversations. There is no information of Corey Kaufman talk in these conversations. Q has already been asked the questions, and she's getting a little astray in what she's trying to go into in these things. The defense has been ongoing objections to many of these questions already, and most of them have been asked and answered already. It has no more value than it did 3 days ago when he started testifying. Hahn stated this is day 4 of the officer testifying, and Marlissa Ferreira has made her point. There is no relevance to going further with this, and it's becoming extremely time-consuming. Jai Gohil argued it's misleading and confusing to the jury. From the beginning, it was clear that he was possibly the witness and the outlaws were suspects in this case. The law enforcement role changes when you are a suspect, and this is all misleading to a jury. This is more like a deposition, which I've been saying. And nothing more than a character assassination of Eddie Quintanar. He said it's time to move on. Marlissa Ferreira said she's almost done. She's on the last call, but wait until we get to the end of this. And says that Quintanar had a lot more information in regards to Poppincork, Robert Woody, etc., in some of the conversations that he had. He clearly has information on the phone call, and he lied to law enforcement officers in the interviews. He is clearly involved and has knowledge, but told law enforcement officers he knows nothing. And she said she is almost done, but wait until we get to the end. This is important information for the Daljeet outlaw and Q's state of mind. Percy Martinez argued this is going to extend into next week, his testimony into next week at the rate we're going. Polishing such a show Quintanar is a bad person is all she's trying to do. It's going to confuse the jury even more and ask court under the 352, that's the evidence code of the judge can decide that something's more prejudicial or time-consuming than it has probative value, and she can put a stop to it. He's asking her to not allow it under 352. Judge Zuniga noted that the arguments made by the defense that he is the choices that Quintanar made to follow the law is equally despite his friendship. He has to follow the law despite his friendship is what she's saying. The objections and Marlissa's inability to phrase questions properly are part of the problem here. The character attacks has been going on by all the attorneys in this case, so she's justifying it by saying, well, you all do it, so I'm going to let her keep doing it. Marlissa Ferreira is doing what all attorneys have done, and if it takes about a week to finish this witness, that is not a factor. Of course not. She's getting big money for this. It is relevant, and prejudice does not outweigh the relevance. Jury was called up about 10:25. They were scheduled for 10. They got up around 10:25. Quintanar was on the stand. Marlissa Ferrer asked him as a CHP, was he obligated to stay within the law and safeguard the lives and property of others, and to provide justice for all. She was asking about the core values that go to his conduct on duty. He agrees that's true, and he believes that's what he did. He was providing justice, trying to provide a fair slate for Daljeet Atwal. He never got his personal feelings or relationships got in the way, and it did not create any ill will or malice on his part, is what he's saying. On the July 15th, 2012 call, Daljeet Atwal said he had gone to the sheriff's office to be interviewed. They had taken him down at gunpoint out of his car, and he asked if he was read his rights and things along that line, and what they wanted to know. Daljeet Atwal said he didn't sign anything. He and Quintanar is trying to figure out what they wanted to know, what it's all about. And Daljeet said they wanted to know about Bobby, and 5-0, meaning Robert Woody, went to Frank Carson's office and was in Daljeet Atwal's car. He did not talk to Daljeet Atwal or Robert Woody in regard to this stuff, in regards to law enforcement's questions. Marlissa Ferrer started referring to the 7/12/12 interview, basically saying the same thing. The officers are asking about Daljeet Atwal car going to Lander Avenue. Quintanar wasn't really sure at first. He had reviewed the transcript, and she asked him if Daljeet Atwal told him that, and he said, yeah, I told him that they were asking about Daljeet Atwal and Robert Woody going to Lander. Quintanar, and during this time too, Judge Aniga had to kind of interrupt things and say she's lost at where they're reading and what they're doing. She can't keep up with what's going on. Quintanar also noted that he was reading the transcript and he couldn't understand exactly what Daljeet Atwal was saying, because it was kind of choppy. It sounded like the transcriber wasn't able to understand everything that was being said, and it sounded like the conversation was a little confusing because Daljeet Atwal has broken English, and he was a little upset. He never told CHP what Daljeet Atwal had told him about any of the things in the phone calls, because he said he didn't really understand what was going on, and he was just trying to find out. He kept calling them motherfuckers and pussies and all kinds of things like that. He was talking about law enforcement officers in the search warrant when he was saying those things. Q said he was upset a little bit because of the search warrant and everything concerned, and it could come back and affect him. He's mad about the whole situation. He did not recall calling the Daljeet Atwal any names, any particular officers, or calling any particular officers' names. He said he was kind of upset with himself too, because he never should have left the guns there in the first place. It was a poor choice that he did make, and he was disciplined by CHP at the time for doing so. Marlissa Ferrer asked him if he said he doesn't want those copsuckers touching his shit, and asked about the paperwork, because all the guns were legal, and the guns that Quintanar had were legal too. Quintanar said those motherfuckers, they're looking for shit, and maybe anyone in a search warrant, and had all the papers on the guns again, and there's nothing bad, so they weren't concerned about that. He asked Daljeet, if he had had his Glock with him, Daljeet said no. He said the number Glock 27 was at home. He had it, but then he said it was under the counter. Actually, they were both excited, and the conversation wasn't going too well. And he said that he shouldn't be armed due to the situation. Did not recall why he asked that, but apparently Daljeet Atwell was concerned that they thought he had a gun in the car, and they had taken him down at gunpoint when they stopped him on the day of the search warrant. Marlissa Ferreira asked if it's illegal to carry a gun without a CCW. There's an objection, and the judge sternly said that is a law, and it's not the law. This kind of turned things sideways. Jai Gohel continued to make objections and was trying to get through the judge, but she was stuck that was the law. There are exceptions to that law, like a business order or your residence. You can carry a concealed weapon in your own business, and you can carry it at home on your own property. The judge was not listening to any of these arguments, and it led to more problems. Marlissa Ferreira asked if the friendship had affected his decisions. He said that he did not compromise his CHP values. He did follow those values because he felt the same values applied to Daljeet Atwell as they do everybody else. She started a question around if he had possibly compromised Scott McFarland's safety by not telling anybody about them thinking he was a informant. There was objections all over the room. The jury was sent out at 10:56, so we had 31 minutes of testimony in front of the jury up to this point. So the judge wanted to know where the questioning was going on this with Marlissa Ferreira. She said that Q went to Pop and Cork and read the search warrant and knew that Daljeet Atwell had suspected Scott McFarland as an informant. Scott McFarland, remember, was a law enforcement officer at that time. Marlissa Ferreira wanted to know if it put Scott McFarland's life at risk, and didn't tell anybody. Judge Zuniga said that Marlissa had already asked a similar question, and it's already in the record, and Marlissa Ferreira was trying to refer to the CHP code. She's trying to jam that down his throat, and she says she is not. The problem is the way she is phrasing the question. Marlissa Ferreira already asked about telling supervisors. Marlissa's trying to get information into an area that was where police officers are killed and such, and that's what she's trying to indicate, that these are dangerous people, and she's not going to allow under 352, remember that's the evidence code, if something had happened to Scott McFarland, it may be relevant, but nothing did. No further actions occurred because of that information. Then, so judge wouldn't allow that. Jai Gohel argued to the court, and this was after we had a break, and Jai Gohel was a little worked up about this because what the judge represented was not true. I mean, she was very adamant that it was. But he told her that anyone carrying a firearm legally in a business or a residence is allowed to carry a firearm. They don't need a concealed weapons permit. Marlissa Ferreira directed the witness to talk about the concealed carry permit is wrong in his own business. Again, she's suggesting it's 1101 evidence, which means it's character evidence, and it's something that's not actual evidence. They're just talking about the personality or the character or what have you of a defendant. And court has allowed Marlissa Ferreira to improperly phrase the carrying a firearm information. It's misleading to the jury. Hans argued Marlissa Ferreira saying to carry a firearm illegally. A CCW, a concealed weapons permit, is to conceal a gun. Firearms can be carried in public. This is Attorney Hahn's argument. Can be carried in public. There's legal ways to carry them in public. There's legal ways to carry them in a car. You can carry them in your house. You can carry them in your business. The reference that the DA is making is that he was doing something illegal. Marlisa Ferreira argued that they were talking about carrying in the car because he was stopped that day in the car by law enforcement. And Judge Zuniga interrupted her in saying that she wanted to read back in the record exactly what the question was. Marlisa Ferreira was reading the transcript talking about it was the gun in the car, but that's not how the question came out, and she phrased it. Hahn says the gun in the car can be carried legally. And Marlisa Ferreira turned and looked at him and says, no, it can't. Well, yes, it can. You can carry guns in cars legally. There's a legal way to do it. Jai Hill argued that Marlisa Ferreira is asking questions that did not refer to the car, and Marlisa Ferreira is talking, what she's saying is misleading the jury is what his argument is. Judge Iniga went back and read the transcript in real time and the questions, and she said it was initially started about the car, but the question came out like on your person, and that's the way it was phrased. She said Marlisa Ferreira asked about the gun on the person. She didn't say ask about the question, the gun in a car. Jai Gohil argued it's also vague. You can ask law enforcement his interpretation of a law, but you can't ask them to say what the law itself. That's a legal conclusion, and he's not allowed to do that, but he can say what his interpretation is. He says a person can carry a gun legally in a business or a home. Marlisa Ferreira was trying to suggest that Daljeet Atwal was carrying a gun illegally, and Quintanar knew about it. Judge Zuniga finally got the point, and she told Marlisa Ferreira to clarify the gun issue with the jury. Jury was back up at 11:41, so they were out almost an hour. No, it was about 45 minutes. Eddie Quintanar is back on the stand, and Zuniga tells Marlisa Ferreira to clarify the gun issue, and she kind of danced around it again. Eddie said he did not recall the DA Daljeet Atwal saying he was out of the car. He was taken out of the car to the sheriff's office. Daljeet said that he talked about a gun they had heard about talk about a gun in the car, but he did not have one. So she kind of danced around it. It really wasn't clarified, but she got away with it. Then she referred back. She said remember earlier, she said she was almost done. She was just talking about the July 15th phone call. Well, now she goes back to the July 12th phone call 3 days prior. And again, he had to refresh his with the transcript. He said that Daljeet Atwal called at 5:26 p.m. or somehow one called the other. He wasn't sure which way it went. He said that the dude called again, and Quintanar asked Daljeet what the detective. They weren't sure if the detective investigator. Quintanar said he would come to the store to talk. Marlisa Ferreira was trying to make it sound like Quintanar was going to the store to talk. What Quintanar had said is that he telling Atwal to come to the detective to come to the store, the investigator, whatever he was, to come to the store and talk, so he could see them face to face, because they're not sure who he was on the phone. So Marlisa Ferreira asked him, "You were giving him advice?" And he said, "Yeah, I was giving him advice. There's a lot of objections to all this, asked and answered. This phone call's been covered before. Judge is letting her go through it again. The last few days they've been going through this phone call." Also, it says that Quintanar said that Dawgs said that they went to his house. The detective lied. Dawgs had told him that he had cameras at his house. Had lied to him also. And then the detective got real quiet when he said that. I don't know what that meant. It sounds like there was something that happened at the house. I don't know. It could be just something that Marlissa Ferreira is just trying to bring about. But Dawgs Atwell was upset that they had gone to his house. He had also threatened to sue. Quintanar had told Dawgs to just tell the guy to stay away. You don't want to talk to him. He has a right not to talk if he doesn't want to. Also, they noted that Dawgs Atwell had talked to some Turlock Police Department officers, including a captain, and Dawgs Atwell has said they went to Frank Carson's office and noted what Frank Carson said, that he wouldn't talk to a certain officer, namely Frank Navarro. And Dawgs was complaining about Navarro and said something to the effect that Navarro used to work at Turlock Police Department. I think he is back there now. I don't know if where he was working at the time. He was on the task force, so. Quintanar said he told him to tell them to go fuck off if he doesn't want to talk. Marlissa Ferreira started going line by line down this July 12th of 2011 phone call. Line by line, she was going down it. And again, remember earlier she said she was almost done. Well, here she's going back and rehashing this phone call over the constant objection of defense because it's been gone over before, but the judge is letting her do it. Ching, ching. He said, Quintanar also said that he never talked to Turlock Police Department, anybody from over there, about Dawgs' statements. And Dawgs told Quintanar that he was being harassed. Quintanar said he's just trying to figure out what happened. He's not really sure what's going on. That was where we hit the stroke of noon. The jury was sent out for the lunch break. And the jury's coming back at 1:45. The attorney's back at 1:30. Got a couple of issues they want to clear up as is a norm in this case. So that means the jury will get up around the earliest, probably 2:15, 2:30. So we're back this afternoon. Don't forget the podcast tonight.